Okay, good morning. I had to get a cough drop. I'm sorry that I'm chewing on something while I'm doing this, but I keep getting choked up. All right, so we're going to start a new story today. So if you'll turn in your reader book to page 2. And we're going to have one work text page to work on. We're going to do it together. All right, so before we get started, let's look at some vocabulary words. Pontoons. Pontoons help a seaplane float when it lands on the water. So these would be pontoons. Flailing. As the boat took off at top speed, Kate flew backwards, her arms flailing, just woo, like this. Awning. A canvas awning covered the roadside vegetable stand. Awning, this would be an awning, something that covers something. Ignite. Mr. Hill used a match to ignite the firecracker fuse. Ignite, that's a verb, something you do. Ignite something, you put it on fire. Assumed. Since Jan had been to our house before, I assumed she knew her way to the kitchen. When you assume something, that means that you're pretty sure that it's right. You're just assuming that it's correct or that someone knows something. All right, this is a picture of me and my RV. I've always wanted an RV. Do you know what RV stands for? It stands for recreational vehicle. Well, I've always wanted an RV because when I was a little girl, we used to go camping with my parents, but we stayed in a tent. We never had an RV, but I had an aunt that went with us, and she had an RV, and I always liked her RV. I always liked the idea. I love to go to the lake, and I don't mind camping in a tent, but the older that I get, the harder it is. So this was actually on my husband and mine and my anniversary this year. It was June the 20th, and he took me out, and he let me pick out an RV. So I don't know if you've ever been in an RV, if you've ever camped in an RV, if you've ever walked through an RV or anything like that. But you might think, well, why in the world is this on here? Well, because today we're going to begin reading a story about a family that doesn't just vacation in an RV, but they actually live in an RV. A lot of people do that. My sister's thinking about doing that pretty soon. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to do reading a little bit different this year than we did last year in 4th grade. And it's because you're in 5th grade now. So what we're going to do is when it comes to the story, I'm not going to read it to you. Now, I read to you in history and heritage studies, but in reading, it's important for you to read. But I want you to read while you have me paused, so it's not something that you can put off, something that you have to get done, okay? All right, so look in your book. It's called Runaway Friends. It's the name of the story. It's a 2-part story. The first part of the story is called Just Passing By. Now, I'm going to have you pause this in just a second, and you're going to read these pages right here on the screen, pages 2 through 7, okay? Now, what's in yellow, that's what you need to find out as you read. There's a reason to read, and the reason that we read is to find things out, okay? So what we're going to try and find out is why Rachel has to keep making new friends and if her plan works all the time. Okay? All right, so go ahead and pause this as you read pages 2 through 7 and turn it back on, and we'll go over what we need to go over. Okay. So, did you finish reading the pages? I hope you did. All right, so I'm just going to ask you a few questions just to make sure that you did read. which you did understand. So what does Rachel like about going to a new school? Make sure you answer out loud, just like I can hear you. Because I can't hear you, but your Nana can. So, she can win races and she impresses people. She tries to impress people. What does she compare her running to? Turbocharged lightning is what she said. What do you think turbocharged means? Like really, really fast. Like really, really fast. Okay. What does Grandpa mean when he says the freedom of the road? He means the freedom to move around whenever and wherever you want to. You're not, you know, set in a place that you have to be. Why hasn't Rachel been to all 50 state capitals? She hasn't been to Hawaii because she can't take an RV there. All right, so where does Grandpa decide to stay for school, for the school year? Albuquerque, New Mexico is where he decides to stay. How do you know that what? How do you know that Rachel thinks it's extremely hot in Albuquerque? She compares the heat in Albuquerque to where? The Sahara Desert. Let's find the part on page 3 where she's trying to get Grandpa to leave. I'm going to read it. Okay. On page 3 on the right-hand side, it's the second paragraph where it says, please don't pay. All right? Please don't pay the space rent, Grandpa Sam, I said. Let's keep driving. We could get to San Diego in a few days. There are good schools there. Think of the beaches I could run on. Think of the cool water. Think of SeaWorld. She's trying persuasion to get him to do whatever. All right, look at page 4. All right, so she's going to run. How is it? So we know why Rachel has to keep making new friends, because she moves around a lot with her grandparents. She's always in a different school. What's her plan to make friends? What's her plan? Oh, you're beating them in a race. That's right. So she's fixing to race this boy named Kyle. Why, whenever they're running, why is Rachel surprised to see Kyle out of the corner of her eye? Kyle's fast. And she's surprised to see that, isn't she? So how do you know that Rachel's angry when the students congratulate Kyle? How do you know she's angry? She says it ignited her fuse. How would you feel if you won a race and no one cheered for you? That'd be kind of tough, don't you think? Why does Rachel respond to Kyle's compliment by saying faster than you? Sounds like she's a little bit jealous, doesn't it? It sure does. Look at pages 6 and 7. So when Rachel says, you'll never beat me, do you think it's the same attitude that she had before? Well, at this point, she's kind of in a laughing, friendly tone. So it's not the same. Why does Chrissy apologize to Rachel? She didn't explain the situation of Kyle to her. So why doesn't Rachel know how to make friends? She doesn't know what real friendship is, does she? She's always just relied on her being quick and being fast to impress people, and then that's how she wins friends, and that's not real friendship. She doesn't really know. So what is Grandma referring to when she tells Rachel not to brag? Referring to the little girl's speed, all the places that she's been, her grandfather who has a lot of money, that kind of thing. So don't brag. People don't like that. That does not make a good friend. Now, Proverbs 18:24, a man that hath friends must shew himself friendly. That's a true verse, especially for this story, isn't it? All right, so let's go ahead and get your work text out. We're going to be on work text page 3. All right, so I'm going to help you with this work text page, and you won't have an assignment today. All right. Now, we're going to learn about first person narrative, okay? All right, so there's 4 little paragraphs on here. We're going to read each paragraph, and then we're going to underline all the first person pronouns, okay? And then we're going to circle the number of each paragraph that is told from the first person point of view. Now, a first person narrative is a story that's told by one of the story's characters. Someone in the story is telling the story. And in the story, they use pronouns like I, me, my, we, our, us, things that talk about I'm in the story. Okay? All right, so let's read number 1. As I read, make sure you underline some of those pronouns that you see. The only good thing about going to a new school was that my new classmates didn't know how fast I could run. So when we lined up for the year's first race, I could run like turbocharged lightning right through the finish line. Then I would listen to the amazed comments of the kids as I pretended not to be breathing hard. Okay, so did you get the pronouns in there? My, I, we, I. All right. Now, is that paragraph told from first person? The person telling the story is in the story. It is. So that's told from the first person. So circle where it says number 1, circle number 1. All right, let's go to number 2. The football teams jogged onto the field from under the stadium bleachers. The game was about to begin. The noisy crowd rose to sing the national anthem. The teams went into a quick huddle. The referee signaled for the kickoff. The Mustang fans jumped up with a cheer as the ball hurtled down the field. All right, were there any one of those first-person pronouns in there? No. So the second paragraph is not told from first person because the person telling the story is not in the story, correct? Look at number 3. We were playing Red Rover at recess. I was running toward the clenched arms of my friends. Their arms were so tight against me that the last thing I remember is going up into the air. The next thing I heard was the doctor saying, "Little lady, what's your name?" I answered her, wincing at the pain and squinting my eyes. All right, I see a bunch of those pronouns in there. We, I, my, me, 3 more I's and another my. It's not important that you get every one of them, as long as you underline most of them. It's just showing us that paragraph number 3 is in first person narrative. So circle number 3. All right, number 4. The cage door rattled as the huge tiger batted it with its paw. My little brother and I were enjoying the scene. With a clang, the door flew open and the beautiful cat bounded to the floor. My little brother's eyes opened wide, and so did his mouth. I pulled him behind a big glass case as the crowd scattered. All right, there's a few of those first-person pronouns in there, aren't there? All right, there's my, 2 my's and 2 I's. And so that means number 4 is first person, so circle number 4. Okay, now we're going to learn something called an acronym. An acronym is a word made of the initial letters or parts of a word or words. Okay, so for instance, RV is an acronym because it stands for recreational vehicle. Okay, so number 1, Rachel lived with her grandparents in their RV. RV stands for recreational vehicle, so RV is an acronym. So you'll put C on number 1. Okay. Number 2, the hard drive on my PC crashed. What do you think a hard drive is on a PC? What do you think a PC is? That would be A, personal computer. Number 3, the scuba equipment helped the diver reach the sunken vessel. Scuba. Did you know scuba is an acronym? It stands for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. So scuba is E on number 3. Okay. Dad watched the national election returns on TV. TV is an acronym. It stands for television. So number 4 is B. And number 5 is the hardest of all. My favorite hymn is not on my sister's CD. That would be D, compact disc. So the next time that you use some letters in what you call something, or when you say something, think of it and say, oh, I just used an acronym. Okay? All right. That'll be all your lesson for the day.